Welcome once again to the Process Podcast, and we are kicking off 2025. So I should say first, Happy New Year to everybody. And we are so glad that you guys have been with us these last few years into year number 5 of the podcast. Let's kick us off with this first edition of our 2025 podcast run. We have a longtime subscriber and current taker of the individual coaching course, Nadzri Harif. He wears a ton of hats. He is a coach, a gym owner, and a radio host, and even a magician. We get into all of that, the intersection of all those things, and how you, if you are a coach, can connect best with your target audience, your client, and all the people around you on this show. All right. Nadzri Harif. First of all, did I say that correctly? It's always a thing in my head to make sure that I pronounce people's names.
Nadzri Harif. Just a little emphasis on the syllable there.
Okay, perfect. Good. Welcome to our conversation. I wanted to get you on this show for a couple of reasons. Number one, like you have a multitude of different responsibilities that, we're just saying before we started recording the episode about you wanting to streamline, including, things like your hair. But just to quickly introduce you here today, you are a Process community member through and through. You train with the Process. You're in the middle of your individual coaching course, and you will eventually finish that course, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I actually just got back on it. Nice. I think, I'm such a big Process fanboy. Like I've been friends with like Ed and Ant since I started competing, I want to say in like 2013 or something like that.
Right.
And I've just been a big fan of their journey ever since. So like, to be on the program for, I want to say over a year now, almost 2 years maybe. And then, over a year. And then now doing the coaching course. Yeah, I'm in the middle of it. I realize I am a slower paced learner than everyone else, but we're getting it done.
That's okay. I mean, we support learning paces of all kinds, and we've seen it all. So it's not a problem. And you're not even lagging that far behind the rest of the pack. So don't worry about that. We're okay. But because you wear so many hats as an athlete, as a coach, as a gym owner, and then you also work within media and entertainment, I actually don't know how to categorize you as a profession. And maybe that's something we can start with, is if you introduced yourself to another person and this was a new person, maybe it's a cocktail party or whatever fancy, how would you introduce yourself to that person?
Man, like that, honestly, that journey for me to try and introduce myself, like over the last few years, have been like all over the place. And I think only in the past year, I've sort of been able to like whittle it down to 3 things. Like if you had to introduce me, or if I had to introduce myself to someone, like what am I? And I think ultimately, I'm a content creator, I'm a host, I'm a magician, and I'm a gym owner as well.
Yeah. Of those things, most of them feel like a good mix. You host things, you coach, you're a gym owner. So a lot of like front-facing personality stuff. That one thing that we can't ignore is the magician part. Let's take a step back. What's up with that? I don't meet a lot of magicians in my day, but I remember growing up when we had like the David Copperfield like TV specials, and like everyone like their minds were blown of how he can like disappear the Statue of Liberty and stuff. You yourself, Nadzri, like when you say you are a magician, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so like I do magic. Like so I started getting into magic around the era when David Blaine was like hot. You know, and he just started coming out, and I remember like he made magic cool again. So because I grew up with a bit of David Copperfield, and I was like, that's pretty cool, but it never really resonated with me. And then when I saw David Blaine perform all his street magic and stuff like that, and I think that's when I really got like, wow, magic is real, And then if we sort of had to jump into my story, like I always thought like there's no chance anyone like me could do it, because he's obviously got something with the devil. So one night, I had a little hangout at my place, and I invited a friend over. I talk about this. I just recently did my like a special. I did a live show recently called Pieces of Me, and I actually talked about this moment where I had a little hangout at my place, invited a friend over. And then my friend was like, hey, I've got a friend with me. Is it okay if he can come? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, So we're hanging out. And then he looks at me and introduces his friend, and he says, hey, I want you to know my friend's a magician. red flag number one, right? So I was like, there's no chance. David Copperfield's a magician. David Blaine's a magician. There's no way this guy could be a magician. And then he goes, no, he's really a magician. He has his own deck of cards. Red flag number two, color me intrigued. I was in. And like looking back, they weren't the best magic tricks in the world. But when I woke up the next day, I immediately thought to myself, like, wow, if this guy, if this local guy, if this Bruneian can do magic, maybe I can too. So I ran over to the bookshelf and lo and behold, I had this book, 50 Easy Magic Tricks. My mom must have just bought it for me, like when I was a kid to like keep me busy or whatever. And then after that, I learned one trick and that was pretty much it. But then a couple weeks after this moment, I was hanging out in where the teens hang out back in the day. And I was at this cafe and I remember I was hanging out with two girls. They were friends of mine. And this guy came over. This is a guy who just got back from like New York. He was all player with it, and he was like, "Hey, what's up, girls?" Like legit, like like someone from New York. Like, "What's up, ma?" Like, can I show you girls a magic trick? And I remember the girls, they were just so like, ugh, like whatever. And he was doing that trick. I don't know if you know, but like your grandpa would always do this trick where you have to deal 3 rows of 7 cards. If you don't know that trick and you're performing that trick, you're that grandpa now. You know what I mean? So,
no.
and then the girls were not impressed. And I said, hey, I learned a trick too. Can I show you guys a trick? And I showed them the trick that I just learned from that book and they freaked out. Like they were like, oh my God. He was like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, people actually like me now. And the rest was history. I said there and then, I want to be a magician for the rest of my life.
Wait. So I just want to scale it back a little bit. So you're hanging out at like a cafe or something. Some dude from New York comes in with a big like New York swagger, right? Probably like
he's a Bruneian guy who was living in New York for a while. Yeah,
and you're seeing him do this grandpa trick, and it doesn't land with these girls. And then you in your head is like, I'm gonna get it. Like, was that the feeling? It was like, I'm gonna one up this rando. Like,
not even one up. It was like, oh wow, like I just learned a magic trick too. Like, what are the chances that this is here? Maybe I can show them some magic as well. So there was definitely no intention to show them up. Growing up, dude, like I was the most insecure kid. Like I was always the odd one out. I wasn't the cool kid. So like I had no intentions like whatsoever to show him up. It was more like, oh, I do magic too. Let me show. Well, kind of do magic. Like let me show you like
you were
what
just
I did.
Like this kind of like boyish like excitement of like I just learned this thing that you tried doing.
For real. For real.
I didn't even read the room that you totally failed in front of these girls. I'm just gonna do it and steal this dude's thunder.
Oh
so he goes back to New York.
We're gonna talk about in therapy next.
No, it's good. And now it all kind of comes back together because, the last time I saw you in photos or in anything or in person back in the athlete camp, you did have more of a David Copperfield like hair. And now you
luscious locks.
have now you have the David Blaine. So it's all making sense. Even the black t-shirt and everything. The only thing is you don't have a severe look in his face when he's doing magic. Like you don't know if he's trying to impress you and like murder you. I'm not really sure.
I feel insecure for being so seen right now. Like all these little things like, oh my God, are you the magician? Like
no, I'm just talking. Like, okay, so I guess this is really, that's like the number one foundational reason why I want to talk to you today is the idea of the magic. And I think the idea of captivating a crowd and, like you mentioned, you are part of the July cohort for the individual coaching course. And I was mentioning this to you when I was reaching out to you about this episode was you said this one thing that was really, really interesting about your relationship with a client as a coach. It can be something like the relationship that you have as a magician to the audience, where you're reading the room, but also you're picking out the people who you could be compatible with to be able to get them on stage and do a magic trick. Now, I'm not really sure the whys and wherefores of how those things are similar. So could you kind of walk us through that? First of all, before you walk us through that, talk us about your other part of your career, which is owning a gym and coaching, and then we can put the two together. So how did you get into the other part?
So I found CrossFit in I think 2012 or something like that. I remember like my first experience with CrossFit was terrible. Like my friend was like, "Yeah, I'm into CrossFit now. I really love it. It's really cool."
That's everyone's first story.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then he was like, "Come, we're gonna go by the pool and we're gonna do a swimming workout." At that time, I was a triathlete. I was like, "Yo, I can swim. Like I can, work out." And little did I know, my first workout was going to be like a swimming Murph, uh, which was like
What?
the worst first workout you could ever have in the history of CrossFit. So I hated it. And then after that, I was like, you know what? CrossFit is unhealthy. It's terrible. No one should do it. And then
Yep.
this guy's brother was like, hey, I'm doing CrossFit too, but I'm at a different gym. Why don't you come on by? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. You know what? Let me give it a shot. I gave it a shot, fell in love with it instantly, fell in love with the community aspect, fell in love with the million and one things that I could work on in my, like, in my back pocket, all that stuff. And then years and years, I've been working at different gyms and stuff like that. And finally, I had the opportunity to buy the gym that I started my CrossFit journey at. So me and three other
Nice.
partners pooled our cash together, and we now own 673 Fitness here in Brunei.
So how long have you owned this gym for?
I want to say about a year and a half now. Yeah, so fairly new still, figuring things out still, not making money, but not losing money. You know what I
So
mean?
you're right at that break even point of just head above water.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, of course, that's a bit more of a common of a gym story than we'd like to admit. But as long as you're happy with doing what you're doing, and I guess that goes into another question I have is, with Brunei and fitness and CrossFit, really the only
Yeah,
people I know in Brunei who do CrossFit are you and your friends, right? So like it's a
yeah,
growing circle
pretty
because it's
much.
you, it's Oi, it's Amar,
Yeah,
and these
yeah,
people who either by one degree of separation or less, as it were, are
yeah.
associated with each other. So what is the CrossFit scene like in Brunei?
A very quick break from this episode to talk about our sponsors, FETAC. FETAC have an awesome training shoe, the All Move 3. It's a very versatile shoe and it's unbelievably comfortable. I've been using this shoe now for the last 4 months, and honestly, it has smashed every other training shoe I have used out of the water. And we have a unique discount code for the process. If you enter the process at checkout, you will receive a 20% discount. So head over to fetac.com and get your shoes now.
Honestly, I think CrossFit, that label, I think everyone sort of moved away from it.
I
I
say,
think, with all sorts of things that happened over the last few years with the business and all that stuff. I'm not even going to bring that stuff up, but we know, but I really feel like there has been a rise in functional bodybuilding. A lot of
I
people
say,
like calling themselves hybrid athletes, but I think in its purest essence, it's just plain old good old program strength and conditioning, which I think everyone now is a bit more aware about strength and conditioning. Everyone's more into it. There's more people picking up barbell. There's more females picking up barbells. There are people more competing in like powerlifting now, Olympic weightlifting now, and like yeah, I think it's really fun to see. I think for the longest time there was that high for CrossFit, like in the 2012, 13s, 14s, and then there was a bit of a dip. Everyone got scared of it. Everyone was worried about being injured, and I think now with the access to the internet and so much information out there, people are open to the idea of strength and conditioning, open to the idea of getting stronger, about picking up a barbell. So I think it's a really cool time to really be a really good strength and conditioning gym at the moment.
okay. So then does that which came first, you being the gym owner or you becoming a coach?
Yeah, I was so when I started in at the time it was called Reebok CrossFit 673. At the time, that was my first intro to like strength and conditioning, whatever. And then I think this was pointed out to me like by people like Ed and other people as well, that you have gotten so much out of your CrossFit experience that you wanted to sort of give back to that community with what you got out of it. So I think early on within my first year of doing CrossFit, I asked Mo, the owner at the time, like, how could I be more, how can I be on the coaching team, how can I sort of help the community? And that's when my coaching journey started. Like I took my L1 and did some shadowing here and there, and yeah, lo and behold, here we are.
And that brings you sweetly into the ICC, our individual coaching course, where now, I mean, it's all about getting the tools that you need to become the kind of coach that you want to be. And I'm seeing some connections here of, tapping into what fitness and what this hybrid athlete could be in Brunei and letting people, I guess, understand, that it can be a safe venture, right? It doesn't need to be a professional sport. You can just make this a passion of yours and still have a 9 to 5 and still have time for your kids, have time for your job and all your other interests, and just letting people know, like, hey, this is something that we could do safely and I can be your guide. Do you have a sense of that responsibility to be able to provide that type of service in your community?
For sure. So I think the ICC was great because, like, I think early on, I already know one of my weaknesses or one of the gaps in my game as a coach is programming. That's such a big weakness for me. I'm confident at coaching, movements. I'm confident at like holding classes, for groups or individuals, keeping them engaged. But I think I always felt so insecure about programming for an individual. And that was something that I was just never confident with. And then when I finally saw, Process was doing an individual coaching course, I think it really helped because I was on the program for, almost a year at the time. And I said, this is really interesting because, I enjoy the program. I really feel like the team at Process have, I mean, not trying to be like too big of a fanboy, but I generally appreciate it. Like, I feel like you guys have figured out programming for that Southeast Asian lifestyle. I don't know how to explain it best, but like, I've been on some other programs before and I'm burnt out. I'm sore, I'm broken. And I feel like even at that age of like 36 at the time, the process felt good. I felt great. I did not feel burnt out. I
Mm.
felt challenged. I felt like I was improving and getting better. And after 3 years of just doing regular strength powerlifting style training at home, coming back to it was like such a nice sort of like way to sort of ease into it. So I was always a big fan of the programming. Then I found out you guys had the coaching course. I remember calling Ed and I was like, hey, tell me a little bit more about this. Will I be able to work on programming, which I am on right now? Module number 3, I'm actually working on programming for my 2 avatars.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. So like it really did, help fill up some gaps in my game and give me structure, how to approach, clients, how to, what to look for in the clients and stuff like that. And now I'm working on programming.
Great. And, I mean, everything you said about being part of the community first as an athlete, I don't know what it is about, in Southeast Asia or just Asia in general, but, there's this sign in my part of the city. So I'm in Shenzhen, which is right next to Hong Kong. And the motto of the city is time is money, efficiency is life. Right. So it's the whole idea that
Whoa.
like it's the idea you got to get up and you got to hustle, and everyone else
Wow.
is moving fast, so you better do a little bit of the same. And I see that kind of vibe also in Hong Kong, and I do see that elsewhere where everyone fills their day with a lot of things, right? So there's important things to take care of in terms of your job, your life, your ambitions, and whatever. And when you do hard training for a long time, and that you can start to feel it, right? In terms of you get your brain gets a little foggy at work, and you just don't have the energy to do other things other than just like go at a bare minimum. So one of the things I did like about joining the process was those kinds of progressions where I can go into the gym and out, and yeah, I got a good sweat on, and I was on the floor for maybe 5 minutes, but then I was able to get up and kind of take care of what else I need to take care of, and be there for my work, be there for my family, be there for my wife, and kind of just get on with my life. And the whole idea of like longevity and being able to perform well and live well, they don't have to be diametrically opposed. They can kind of go in concert with each other, right?
I agree, man. Like, I think there were moments where sometimes you'd beat yourself up for not finishing like athlete programming or whatever. And what I really enjoyed was that you guys actually had tiers, right? You had live, perform, compete, elite, and like, yeah. And like I'm even talking to Mariam right now who just joined Process programming. And she said like, hey, Ed told me that I should be on, live or compete for a while. Sorry, live or perform for a while before jumping into that compete aspect, So like I feel like that was such a big win, like giving people options. And I think everyone's always so ashamed of like, oh, but I'm not on the compete cycle. I'm not on the elite
Yeah, yeah.
cycle, let alone, oh, I didn't even finish all my programming today. I'm never gonna make it to the CrossFit Games. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, man, I totally get it. I totally get it.
I mean, I think there is, I don't know what it is. Like, you grew up in an Asian household where like everything is like high expectation. It's like, oh no, you're not at the top level. Like, but it's like, it's exercise, right? It should be a part that like, a part of your life that enhances your life. So what were you saying?
For sure. Like, are you an oldest child?
I'm the middle child.
Middle child. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I'm the oldest son in the family, so even more of that expectation, right? And my parents divorced when I was 13 as well, so
Like, what does that mean? Like, what do you have a responsibility, or do you have like this top of the totem pole type of mentality, or what's up?
yeah. So like it's weird, right? Because I always thought like my little sister was the golden child, and I was always like, oh, blah blah blah, And like I remember like my sister at one point she was like, how annoying or like how hard it was for me to grow up. I'm like, what do you mean? You're like the golden child. And she was like, yeah, but with all your little achievements here and there. Now I had to freaking step up. And I'm like, oh, I never saw it from that perspective before. But also like when my parents divorced, I, it sort of drilled into you, right? Like, oh, you're going to have to be the man of the house now. You have to look after your mom and your sister. And I think that was like a big turning point in my life where I felt like I needed to be like a partner for my mom and like a dad to my sister.
Mm.
And I think over the years, it caused a lot of like inner turmoil, a lot of like ups and downs in my life, like incongruency with what my values were and stuff like that. But I think only over the last few years, I realized I had to sit down and really think to myself that my role in my life is not to be a partner to my mom or like a father to my sister, but more to be a son to my mom and a brother to my sister. And all of a sudden, my mind exploded. Like, oh, of course, that makes so much sense now, and like everything sort of lines up a bit more. I digress. I'm sorry. We had a little therapy session here with you.
No, it's cool. Just keep. I don't know why, but people always tell me that I do provide some type of therapy, like I don't know, mirror for them, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
And I'm here to listen, and that's what's the great thing about the podcast. And I think
I appreciate
you're
it.
also talking about streamlining your life. It's like it seems like you
Yeah.
do have these moments where things happen, and then you take a chunk of time of just letting things happen, and then you take a big step back and go, whoa,
Yes.
let's rearrange things, right? So you're in the middle of that yourself right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I think I underestimated how busy my end of years would be. Like I know end of year for me in Brunei is usually quite hectic. Like I think in November, December I had 12 gigs on top of still doing daily radio, on top of still coaching like 5 days a week. So like it was pretty intense last 2 months.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount.
And I think it gets so overwhelming sometimes that I really do feel like I need to step back. Like all my jobs are so forward focused, right? So forward facing. Being a coach, being on radio, being an MC, being a magician, like they're all forward facing. And even on your crappiest days, you still have to give like 110%. Like, hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Blah 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 blah. So when it does get a little full on, and I underestimated this for the end of the year, it gets full on, and I just feel like I need to be a bit of a hermit. I need to be in my blanket, just watching Netflix and binging, and really taking like a revenge break, and then slowly ease myself back into it.
So, I mean, this is a really interesting concept because, one of the things that we have to figure out as coaches, especially when we're public facing professionals, and you are public facing in so many different ways on radio, so your voice, on stage, so in front of a live audience, even small one-on-one with your PT and with your group class coaching. There's a whole idea of like your public persona and then like kind of things happening privately where even if things are hitting the fan, you still have to show up and, you have to kind of leave it at that door and then walk out in front of the audience and then you come back, on the other side of that door and then deal with everything later. Like, it sounds like you have a lot of public time and then you have like this kind of, you kind of let it all out and kind of do your own thing and hermit for a second. How do you best what's the best way to balance out the two things? Like, do you want to be more honest in your public persona or do you want to keep those two things really separate? Coming from a coach, I'd love to hear, coming as a coach, I'd love to hear how you approach that situation.
Yeah. So I know some radio DJs who are like totally different people off the mic and totally different when they're on the mic. And I try to be super, I want to be super genuine. I want to be able to, that when someone who listens to me on radio and they finally meet me in person or whatever, just to say hello, like I want that person to have the same experience, the same, thing. So that for me, whether I'm coaching, whether I'm on the gym floor, whether I'm on stage, I want them to all see me as this one congruent like character. So whatever you get in person is whatever you get out there. So that was my number one thing that was like a hard yes, this has to happen like this all the time. Like I do not want to be fake on radio and then be a different person in person, so that was the one thing that I sort of was like a hard, yeah, this has to happen like this all the time.
So you want to ensure that who you are on camera, on radio, on stage is the same Nadzri as off.
For sure. Now, I think also I have to remind myself, like, there are some days where we don't want to coach, but we have to, right? Like, it's our job. And, there's no saying where people, like, I have to remind myself, like, hey, I know you're having a crappy day right now, but people are paying for your time and for your services and for your expertise. So if that's to help launch a car right now, if that's to help launch a new business, if that is to show up and do IG stories, if that's to coach on the floor, to PT, like you bet your butt you have to show up and you give them like the best experience possible. So I think I've been really good at sort of like, okay, as soon as the thing starts, throw whatever crap is in my head out the way, be super present, be 100% like there and giving them the experience that they paid for and they want. And then after that, that's my own time. So however I want to deal with it, I think, that's it. Whether it's to work out on my own, or sometimes I'll come back from work and my wife will be there and I'll be in the bedroom and I'll be like, hi. And she's like, hey. And then I just lie down on the floor, on the carpet, like to myself. And she'll be like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm okay. I just need 10 minutes. And she's like, okay, I'm going to be outside if you need me. I'm like, all right. So sometimes it's just finding pockets of time just for me and yeah, just finding like things that will sort of help me relax, calm out.
While listening about you describing that, during COVID, I've had to get a few like fitness equipment for the home, which I don't use anymore because we have gyms again. But one of the things is like a tumbling mat, a really short one, like an inch deep. And I use for stretching and for foam rolling or whatever my wife uses for yoga. There are days when I come back from work and I just go straight to that and I just lie down. Like I don't even change. I just take off my backpack, take off my shoes, and I just lie down. And then I just need to like decompress. So it is wild to hear you say that because I do the same thing of like everything
exactly
is
that, man,
right now.
Yes,
and I need to like
for sure
to be anything for anyone at this moment other than me at rest.
Yeah. So it's funny that you said that because like for me as well, I'm usually either coming back from coaching or coming back from a gig, which means I'm in my outside clothes. That's why I can't be on the bed. That's why I'm on the floor in the carpet, like just sometimes in a suit, sometimes in my gym gear, just laying there on the floor.
Yeah.
And my wife is like, oh, you need 10 minutes? I'm like, yeah, I just need 10 minutes. She's like, okay, I'll just be outside if you need me. I'm like, thanks, babe. So yeah.
Right on. So like there is a tacit understanding of what Nadzri needs in that moment. Nice. It's your safe space.
My safe space. You're right. That's how I would say it. There was one thing that you mentioned just now about I think sort of like magic and finding the right volunteer and then also finding the right client for a PT.
Let's all bring it all together, right? Like what are the similarities here and kind of teach us as, a magician coach how we can bring that magic into our coaching.
Yeah. So I really feel like all my jobs really have like the similar skill set that I can sort of use anywhere and everywhere, which is really great. So, if I'm doing walk around magic, I have to sort of approach different groups or different tables throughout the night. Like every 5 minutes, I'll sort of go out. I will just like, hey, real quick, blah, 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 blah. Do you want to see a magic trick? And I feel opening a set like that is very similar to opening, a show for, it's an annual dinner for a company. It's also the same as like, as soon as I start my class, these I really feel are skills that I use everywhere. So like learning how to open a group, keeping them engaged, economy of words, like these are all skills that I use on radio, coaching, and like, social media, whatever. It's like, these are just some of the skills that I feel have a nice overlap together. So it's not like I have to learn a different skill set to be a coach, a different skill set to be a magician, a different skill set, but it's really nice that there's some overlap between all the things that I do.
So when you're talking about you said a walk around, that means like you're just kind of approaching tables at a show or like you're like at a cafe or at a bar. They don't even know that you're gonna do something.
Oh no. So it's usually like at an event, it's like table to table. So then every time you have to learn how to open a table every single time.
Okay,
right?
so
So I have to
here's the
go.
thing, and maybe this is like a good social skill.
Yeah,
What would be a good like tried and true opener for anyone? So like for
yeah,
example, sometimes I've seen other coaches or even myself like opening a coaching session of like with a dud, right? Like a dad joke that
yeah,
just was not did not read the room right or just whatever.
yeah,
Or like I'm coming
yeah,
in with a bunch of energy that they were not ready for. What for you
yeah.
has been a good opener for a new crowd?
So like I think when I'm like, here's something I do at the gym, right?
Okay.
So immediately from the get-go, if I see someone new come into the gym, I'll immediately just head on right over and be like, hey, I'm Nadzri, because the gym sometimes is not sometimes, all the time, scary place,
Yeah,
right?
intimidating
Like
for sure.
new people, new environment, maybe skills that you've never done before. So immediately I always make it a habit to head on over to the person coming in and be like, hi, I'm Nadzri. I'll be your coach today. You know, what are you up to? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, how do you, you know, any injuries I need to know about, blah, blah. Just quick conversation. Just at least so they know, okay, I'm welcomed here. They know that I'm new and I'm in this space. So then they come into the class and then you have all these other people, right? People who are at the gym, maybe months, years, whatever, and then this new face comes in. So I always try to do this thing where I'm like, hey, cool guys, we've got a new face in class today. Just to sort of make sure we're all on the same page. I'm going to ask you guys a very important question. I need to know your name and your favorite ice cream flavor. And I always kick it off. I'd be like, hey, my name's Nadzri. I love coconut ice cream. And then I'll point to a member, blah, 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 and go around the room. At least the new faces are there and be like, great, welcome. You know, these are the guys that are new today. You know, show them some love. If you guys do need help, let me know immediately. So immediately, just from that interaction alone, I can kind of see like, how much energy do they want to give out today in terms of interacting? Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? So I think it's little things like that I just do to sort of just get a bit more of a understanding of what kind of coaching does this person like prefer or enjoy, or at least give me a starting point.
Yeah, so it's like a throwaway question, right? Like
Yeah,
everyone probably has a favorite flavor of ice cream. If they do, they'll say it, but it's also like how they say it, right? If they're coming
yeah,
in with a lot of energy and you can hear them clearly, if they're kind of muttering or if they don't even say
hmm,
anything, like it's just the body language too, right? Those it's a
for
pretty
sure.
easy question where it's not so much the answer that matters, it's what you're getting from them when they respond to you, right?
For sure. And I love that. Like, you know, just like, okay, so at least I kind of know a little bit more about this person. I might not be correct, but it gives me a really good jumping off point. And I think the one thing that you brought up as well was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the time, Ed was talking about finding the right coach or finding the right PT client, because
Yeah,
sometimes it's not a good match, right?
right.
So when I think about that, I immediately think about me trying to choose a volunteer for Magic. So when I'm on
Mm,
stage, I literally have you know, maybe 10 minutes, maybe sometimes even seconds to decide which volunteer am I going to bring on stage, depending on how the house lights are like. So sometimes the house lights come on and I have to make a decision like really quick on who will I bring up on stage. And I'm always looking for someone who's not too like into it, someone who's not like, they can't be too bored, but they also can't be too excited. And I feel like I've gotten an idea of like where that middle ground is, because that middle ground is usually the best one on stage. So the ones that are too bored, sometimes they'd want to act alpha. They might not be too
mm.
uh, engaged on stage. So it doesn't look fun or great at all. Someone who's too excited might start acting up, trying to do things that might, you know, in their defense, to help you with your show and try to be better,
I
you
gotcha.
know. So there's like a really nice balance, and I really feel like I've kind of figured out that balance most of the time. And I feel like being a coach is like that. You have to find the right fit, not only for you but for them as well, because sometimes, like Ed said, you have to tell them, I'm sorry I can't be your coach, but here are some people that I might recommend for you.
I love it. I mean, these are all great takeaways in social gatherings, in coaching, in magic, if you do so choose. Nazri, we're kind of running out of time here, but I do want to thank you for coming on to the show. And if we can find
Thank you for
you on
having me,
Instagram,
man.
we'll put you on the notes.
Yes,
And you
please.
can find Nazri for coaching, for magic, for radio, for entertainment, for releasing your new car, all these different things. And peace.
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.